There is a groundswell of support for societal change when it comes to issues of sexual misconduct and consent. Many women have been calling for cultural and legislative change, but men are also an important part of the conversation. For more, I'm joined by Phil Barker, the author of The Revolution of Man. Phil Barker, welcome to ABC News. We've heard incredibly brave calls from Grace Tame, Australian of the Year, to allow survivors to speak up and for a conversation about these issues to bring change. What do you make of the way that men are engaging with this in general, and do you see room for improvement?
Room for improvement. Absolutely. It's below a C- at the moment. But what I think is interesting is one of Grace Tame's quotes herself. She says we're on the precipice of a revolution, and I think that's exactly right. And I think you could, shut down all the coal-fired stations in Australia right now and export the energy of the rage of women in Australia right now. It's just extraordinary. It feels like we're building on the anger of 2017 right now. Do men have a way to go? Absolutely. To have to tell a man that it doesn't matter how a woman dresses, it doesn't matter where she is, it doesn't matter how much she's had to drink, we still don't rape them and attack them. And it's 2021. To have that discussion now is utterly horrific, and to see it playing out in our seats of government in this way is also equally horrific. And I just feel for how women must be feeling in this moment right now.
And we're also seeing, Phil, a push for a more detailed education around consent in particular. We've seen young women coming forward with their own stories and saying that we need to start doing this and we need to do this at a younger age. What considerations do you think need to be taken on board there?
Well, I think ultimately sexism isn't a learned behaviour, and this is what we're talking about. This goes back to the performance of masculinity and all of the stories that are going around about the gender issues that we're facing at the moment. So, boys come out as soft and loving and joyous and empathetic as girls, but the idea that we have to be a man, don't be a pussy, don't be gay, and also don't be a girl. The fact that you're a big girl is still a massive insult. Just shows how very far we've got to go. I think we'll look back in the future and say that we were incredibly barbaric in our views on the differences between women and men in this time. And you did write The Revolution of Man 2 years ago. You have obviously been spending a lot of time looking at manhood, the way it's framed in our society. When we take into account the issue of cultural change as a core issue in addressing violence against women, what do you see as the biggest impediments? Because, this is an issue you were looking at 2 years ago. It's an issue that, we've been looking at basically for decades, centuries, in fact. So why is it that we can't get the change that we want to see? Look, I think it's happening slowly, and I think the idea we're on some sort of precipice of a revolution is correct, but I think no group in human history has ever voluntarily given up the power that they hold on to, and that applies specifically to white males as well. We're going to have to be dragged kicking and screaming out of Parliament to be replaced by women. That would be hopefully the case of what's going to happen. But I think seriously, every woman at the moment, the reason there's so much rage out there is every woman has her own Brittany Higgins or Grace Tame story, or personally knows someone who does. Yet men, we are not a rapist and we don't know any rapists, and the disparity between those things show that there's something horribly wrong. I was looking at my social media this afternoon, and the anger that's out there just from senior people in the media, like Wendy Harmer. She was saying she'd just spoken to someone who was raped when she was younger, and that person said no one believed the girl back then. And Harmer wrote, "We are just scratching the surface of the crimes against us." Another woman wrote, if the women around you are visibly and viscerally angry right now, ask them why. For too long, we've been dismissed, belittled by those with privilege, power, and patronage. It's not only about rape, it's about misogyny, patriarchy, and so much more. The anger out there is incredibly real.
So when we're talking about making this a conversation, how do we then bring that to a place where we feel that women are being heard, but also that the issues are understood and that real change does happen? How do men play that role?
The only thing that men can do is look at ourselves for a start. what's in our hearts? What do we believe? The conversation must have prompted so many men to think, what's going on with me? There's all these things happening. How am I? What's my relationship to women, and what's my attitudes on gender? So first we start with ourselves and the language that we use and how we treat women, what we say to women, whether we see women as individuals on the planet with equal rights to ours or simply objects. And then if you can get that sorted in yourself, maybe you can take the position of being brave enough to be able to say to other men, hey, I don't think that was a good idea to say that. I think that was sexist. I think that was bad. I think that was wrong. And you open yourself up to all sorts of policing, and it's really brutal, and you lose friends and all of that. But if you can be brave enough to start the conversations, there will be other men who are isolated who want to join in and want to be part of the change. And I think that's where the opportunity is for men to talk, to fix ourselves, to start working on ourselves, and then to start conversations with other men.
And how important is it when we look at this from the perspective of those who are talking about what's happening to our children, the sorts of ideas that boys and girls are also being influenced by? How critical is that conversation for the next generation?
I think it's incredibly critical. I think for a young man right now, it's really easy for them to go down some sort of right-wing rabbit hole and join the incels, because if I was a 15-year-old boy and I was told that I was toxic just because I was born male, I'd be tremendously upset, because I don't feel that in my heart. I don't feel that behind my eyes. But what I think the conversations you need to have with young men particularly is it's not that you, man, are broken or toxic, but the performance of masculinity is incredibly toxic and damaging. That's why 6 men a day are killing themselves. That's why more than one woman a week is being bashed to death in a home by a partner. So if you can have those conversations with young men, and they're really interested in having them, because there doesn't seem to be a lot of leadership out there at the moment. I think it's incumbent on all older men who have had conversations with themselves about these things to start having conversations with younger men, because that's where the change is going to come from.
Author and journalist Phil Barker, we appreciate you so much for your time with us on ABC News. Thank you.
Thanks, Marion. I appreciate it.